Game of Thrones truly was the world's greatest TV show. And then it was Red Wedding style murdered by these two guys. What's crazy is I was super late to the Game of Thrones hype train. I didn't see a clip of Game of Thrones until they were on season 4 or 5. I was in college and I couldn't afford HBO. After seeing like 1 minute of a random episode, I knew immediately that this was a show for me. I went off and read all the books and caught right up to where the TV show was. Watching the TV series live was such a moment. How can you not dive headfirst into the fandom? At one point, it was my favorite thing to be obsessed with. I found every fan that was in my life of Game of Thrones and would always discuss the show with them. I was deep into all of the videos on YouTube, going over all the details that were within the books, comparing them to the series. I loved it. I downright pity anyone who has yet to experience the masterpiece that is Game of Thrones. Even Isayama, the creator of Attack on Titan, said he was inspired by the show, and he wrote the world's greatest anime. There are so many characters and stories intertwined together. I love that there's so many characters, and I have so many favorite characters. I love them for either their journey, their personality, or even just the acting. Like, sometimes the character is a bastard, but I love the acting, which makes me love the character and every time he's on screen. I'm talking about Joffrey. I'm sorry. I love Joffrey. He makes the show, okay? Like, he killed it. The whole Lannister family killed it in the acting, to be honest. Like, they win out of all the houses. Like, that family was killing it with the acting. But, I mean, Lady O was good, though. Her and Marjorie came in, and they was, like, perfect. I truly love the show so much, and that's why Season 8 was the biggest betrayal of my life. They really had me out here looking goofy being a Thrones fan, like spending all this time theorizing, deep diving into what eventually becomes plot holes. Disappointing. They murdered what would have been a great show, like the best show. Season 1 through 4 started off so strong, so good, and then it just kind of died. Like, why? Why did you do this? Anywho, with House of the Dragon, the first Game of Thrones spin-off series, less than a month away, I thought this would be the perfect time to analyze the representation of my phenotype in Game of Thrones. Because despite having a huge black fan base, there ain't none. Game of Thrones was one of the TV shows where I had to almost immediately accept that my image was completely excluded and try not to be bothered by it, even though I'm a person who is very sensitive to racism, colorism, and exclusion. I don't think it's a good idea for Black women to support media and spaces that exclude or degrade our image, and typically my pride won't allow me to watch, let alone support any franchise that does this. So this exception truly speaks to how phenomenal I believe the show to be. It makes me sad that there aren't any Black girls in Thrones. Everyone wants positive representation. It's human nature. When your image is often and intentionally associated with negativity like struggle or slavery, you truly desire it. And more than ever, negative association truly does have real life consequences. It's not just a vanity thing. Being represented so poorly in media encourages people in real life to treat you poorly. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to see yourself in the things you like, which includes legendary TV shows. I think it's super important for Black women to see themselves in different spaces. We need it. However, there is a lot of resistance to Black people in the film, sci-fi, fantasy, nerd world. As a young nerd who loves TV and animation, I noticed right away how my image was treated differently in the media, if it was included at all. I also realized that television can be really racist. Also, keep in mind when considering my perspective that my nationality is American and I'm a descendant of American slavery. Exit this video immediately if you can't handle intelligent discussion and Black women POV about race and race issues. Now. This is not the video for you. Seeing how the Game of Thrones fandom lost their minds at the casting of a Black man as Corlys Velaryon in the prequel series, House of the Dragon, hurt my feelings, I guess. There has always been this pushback from very vocal non-Black fans that Black people shouldn't be represented in most sci-fi fantasy worlds. and especially not as a main character. Black people actually got a lot of flack from Game of Thrones fandom for pointing out that the majority of the black and brown people extras included in the Game of Thrones were slaves. And this includes our beige POC Thrones representatives, Grey Worm and Missandei. Missandei and Grey Worm were the only brown Afro-adjacent characters to reoccur in the series since their debut. Grey Worm is an Unsullied, a soldier in a slave army.
Every day they drill from dawn to dusk until they have mastered the short sword, the shield, and the 3 spears. Only 1 boy in 4 survives this rigorous training. Their discipline and loyalty are absolute. They fear nothing.
My master says the Unsullied are not men. Death means nothing to them. He begs you attend to this carefully, Your Grace.
Yeah, I hate this part.
To win his shield, an Unsullied must go to the slave marts with a silver mark, find a newborn, and kill it before its mother's eyes. This way, my master says, we make certain there is no weakness left in them.
And Missandei was stolen from her home and sold into slavery. When we meet her, she is a slave and translator to some slavers, aka the Masters. Dany buys her, and she happily joins Dany after the boss battle. Missandei, like Grey Worm, is loyal to Dany, and that's her entire character. And although Daenerys is my girl, I hated all the white savior moments in the show. As a descendant of American slavery, this depiction of white people liberating the black and brown slaves is undermining and very distasteful. If you know anything about American history, specifically slavery, Jim Crow, and civil rights, you might be able to understand why. And that Misa episode was just bad on the optics. Yes, the events taking place might make sense for the show, but for this to be the most representation blackish brown people get in the entire series is offensive. As a black person, it's always, funny, but not funny haha, funny weird when sci-fi fantasy excludes black people. Often, and especially on Twitter, black people are reminded that our likeness in these fictional worlds isn't logical. These same people don't hold back with expressing their disgust and frustration at our choices to create our own representation and appreciation for the TV shows that we enjoy. Take cosplay, for example. Most black cosplayers have been disrespected with the famous line, "That character isn't black. That character doesn't have hair like that." These same pests will also attack black artists who create badass interpretations of non-black characters as black. We are told we're not allowed to be included in fiction because it wouldn't make sense, and then reprimanded for seeking out our own versions of fiction. This just speaks to the hatred most people have towards black people. I find this very weird and racist, and it's really hard for me to accept that kind of gaslighting because you're basically telling me that wargs and giants and dragons, ice gangs, and
those are giants riding mammoths down there!
warlocks, witches, the children of the forest, they can all exist in this world, but black people is too far-fetched? Okay. People really go out of their way to let us know that we're not welcomed in this genre. And I'm just like, dang, why are you trying to gatekeep the genre? I know it's racism, but it's just crazy. The bigger conversation that needs to be had, like intellectually, is why so many people don't want black people in these spaces. Why are black people not allowed to be celebrated within fandom? But no one wants to have that conversation, so never mind. Another thing you hear often as a black nerd from the community is that including someone like you is a form of politics. We are truly gaslighted in every direction. Sometimes it's that we don't fit into the culture or that time period, maybe the environment. May I remind you that this is fiction? The cosplay thing really is so annoying. Like, relax. These aren't even real people. And since when do you care? There is a small silver lining. Black women and girls have created a voice as well as a sub-community in the sci-fi, film, anime, fantasy themed fandoms. And black women recently have become very visible in these spaces in my opinion. In addition to the conversations online Black women are having with each other about life improvement and understanding trauma specific to us, and thanks to the women who created platforms bringing Black girls specific social issues like colorism to the attention of so many, all of these things in combination are improving our self-esteem collectively. And therefore, we're putting out our own positive imagery, which is good. I see things slightly improving, but we're showing up a little more and a little more positively in places we're often excluded. We've been having a few victories on screen as well, but it's not enough. It's a challenge to even celebrate when Black women are cast into significant, exciting roles that do wonders for our collective image. When Pokemon debuted Nessa, a seemingly Black gym leader, racist nerds immediately had reactions to Black women receiving positive representation. They reacted the same way when Miss Halle Bailey announced that she was going to be Disney's live-action Little Mermaid, which reminded me of the time the adorable little Black girl played Annie. And Twitter allowed all this racism on their platform towards Black women. They only blocked the Black women when they started to defend themselves. I remember, I was there. So because there wasn't many Black people in Game of Thrones on TV, it's like not a surprise there's no Black girl representation like at all. My Phenotype was definitely excluded from the series. I'm aware that everyone considers Missandei and Grey Worm to be the Black characters of the show, but defaulting every mixed person to Black is just another form of racism. Both actors present as mixed race, so they would fall under brown representation, not Black. Remember, this video is about analyzing women of my phenotype, and I am an unambiguous monoracial Black woman. Being Black and being mixed with Black are two different groups and two different experiences. And although we may share some similarities, just as we do with most humans, we are respectfully unique. And it undermines Black women when you allow another group of women to represent us. We have a plight unique to being monoracial with Black features. The way we are mistreated for our Black features is a stark contrast to the way mixed people with very diluted Black features are often celebrated. And this trickles into everyday life, so it can have some serious consequences. Also, keep in mind that I'm speaking from an American standpoint. My nationality is American, although I am aware that anti-Blackness and colorism is global. So the actress who plays Missandei, she presents as a multiracial mixed woman, definitely doesn't give me unambiguous Black woman. Although I did side-eye how they made the only mixed girl a slave. The same way I side-eye Miss Thompson in Bridgerton, same vibes. But that's a whole nother video coming soon. I don't believe in identifying with other brown girls to make up for my lack of representation. I think that's delusional. I don't think it's smart, nor is it a good look for Black women to do that, even though I'm aware that so many do. I definitely can root for other brown girls and celebrate our similarities, but I like to keep it real with myself. Also, Black women and mixed women, including women mixed with Black, have two very different experiences in film representation. The Black women specific issues I have with our representation, such as being portrayed as masculine, being associated with struggle or hard times or slavery, or just being cast in such negative, demeaning roles, or just not being cast at all. We don't share that plight with our Black adjacent counterparts. Mixed women are typically very successful in landing roles that elevate their beauty standard to the world. They can receive a lot of versatile roles that are mostly positive, but most importantly, they're landing roles. Even in Black media, you'll notice Black women are often excluded or reduced to a stereotypical role, but mixed women are very present and they are very visible. It was hard not to notice as a Black person that all the other brown people were slaves and servants. The whole Moroccans came to the audition really doesn't cut it with me. Often Black people are cast in subservient roles on TV, which contributes to the negative stereotypes that Black people are less than, which influences how the world views and treats Black people in real life. Any argument anyone could give me about why the slaves of Game of Thrones were majority brown doesn't hold much weight because there was no balance. See, if they had like a powerful family of Black people incorporated into the story, I could maybe accept that. However, that brings us to House of the Dragon. So House of the Dragon is already being applauded for being inclusive towards Black people, or at least Black men. And although for both Black men and especially Black women, representation is overall lacking, the Black man's image has actually been very much included in Game of Thrones. And it's kind of true for the sci-fi fantasy genre as a whole. Like, they have overall more and better representation in film than we do, especially in sci-fi fantasy. And I would like to point out that although black women had no representation, no characters, black men actually had quite a few other than the slaves. You guys had the scamming king of Karth, and the pirate Salador San, I think his name was, and you had the Dornish security guard who sucks at his job. While none of these characters are reoccurring, I mean 2 of them died on like screen, black men phenotype is at least being acknowledged by the show. And none of these characters are stereotypes. They truly do fit into the world. Lord Corlys Valerion, I believe. He's being played by a monoracial, unambiguous black man, and this is a major character. I took a peek at the House of the Dragon cast, and I saw a possibility of maybe 2 black girls. However, after watching a few YouTube videos, I think the 2 kids I perceived as black may actually be biracial after all. It's part of the story. So we may not have any black girl representation in House of the Dragon either. One thing I've noticed is whenever black men are casted, he usually is very obviously black. He has dark skin, textured hair, black facial features, and no one ever has to second guess what he is. It's the very opposite when black women are casted. Typically in this space, they'll choose a more ambiguous looking woman who may have a hint of blackness, but lighter skin, looser hair, and is clearly either mixed or biracial. This actually sends a bad message to black women. The message it sends reads that black men can look black and be accepted, but black women must be mixed because women with mixed phenotype is the preferred version. This is something most, if not all, black women have heard or experienced in their lives. We often suffer through comparisons of our phenotype and see our image being excluded or berated. This contributes to the collective low self-esteem of a lot of black women, and often the reason why so many black women begin worshiping mixed phenotype over their own, identifying with other brown girls, and hating other black women to cope with their self-hatred. This message isn't just TV either. All kinds of media have expressed hatred towards black women imagery, and it's especially true in the black community. And fellow black women, just so you know, there's nothing wrong with black women wanting their own representation, and there's nothing wrong with making the distinction between black and being mixed with black. Every other race does it. For some reason, black women aren't allowed to. But forget that. I hope to see my phenotype represented positively in a TV show like this one day, because I'm a huge fan of Game of Thrones, and I'm sure I will be of House of the Dragon, which I hope that it surpasses Game of Thrones, which I believe it will. It better, to make up for season 8, please. Regardless, I want to see myself in Thrones, so I'll take the pandering. If that's the way I get in, that's the way I get in. Also, if you like videos like this, check out my other video analyzing black girl representation in The Boys, one of my other favorite TV shows. And if you so much as think about leaving some nonsense in my comment section, I swear by the old gods and the new,